Welcome, Jet fans, to another episode of the Jets Life podcast. Normally on Fridays, I try and take this time to discuss the upcoming game. But this week, obviously, there's been a lot of, going back and forth on a particular topic, namely the quarterback, and what the Jets can do. Let me just come out here and flat out say from the get go, I am 100% in favor of potentially making a change at quarterback. Um, Does that mean I believe the Jets are gonna win more games with Trevor Siemian? That would be eventually the hope. But I don't believe Trevor Siemian moves the needle, too much. But let's start with Zach, initially here, and let's just talk about him a little bit here. Now, obviously, we all understand that Zach is not going to, be our long-term quarterback. It just the writing is kind of on the wall for this. Um, too much inconsistency. Um, he's gun shy. He's not making the throw when he needs to make the throw. But there's more to it than just seeing him in the pocket, holding onto the ball, and not making a throw. There's a lot more stuff going on outside of that. I mean, this offensive line, at least on the right hand side, for the most part, has just been getting demolished. We saw Joey Bosa. I think he had 3 sacks in that last game. And upcoming this week, got Max Crosby. Billy Turner is likely not going to play. That's going to be a huge boost for the team on the right side, but who's going to fill in that spot? Um, I personally thought it was a little strange that they decided to move Max Mitchell inside to right guard and put Billy Turner on the right tackle spot. I'm not saying that Max Mitchell would have done a great job against Joey Bosa. Obviously, Bosa is an elite pass rusher, and Max Mitchell's someone we picked late in the draft, so not really someone I expect to be able to hold up against Joey Bosa. Probably would have had a similar effect. But Billy Turner is someone I just didn't have a lot of confidence in. He wasn't a guy that the Jets had much confidence in, obviously, to play right tackle because he's only being thrust into that role this late in the season because of so much O line issues. I would have thought maybe guard would have been a better suited spot for him. But at the end of the day, Zach's not getting the amount of time that he necessarily needs in order to be able to kind of stand in there, deliver, wait for these guys to get open, which is the next topic. These receivers are not getting open. Outside of Garrett Wilson, there's not much happening at the wide receiver position. Um, Randall Cobb is obviously, no, we weren't really expecting him to be a wide receiver three like he is being right now. Um, my vision of this, obviously with Rodgers too. But my vision was obviously Garrett Wilson, wide receiver one, Lazard, wide receiver two, Corey Davis, wide receiver three. Obviously, the wide receiver two just because of his familiarity with Rodgers, not so much that he's a better player than Corey Davis, but that was obviously a topic for a lot of debate earlier in the offseason. Okay, sorry about that. But yeah, so Lazard, Corey Davis, and then, we had McCole Hardman. He's been traded. And then Randall Cobb was kind of my fifth wide receiver. Didn't really have anything with these undrafted free agents. Obviously, we didn't have any much information on those guys. But at the end of the day, I mean, this is a receiver group that is kind of trickled down to Garrett Wilson and everybody else. And unfortunately, for this group, nobody else is doing much of anything. In fact, the few opportunities that the Jets have had to make big plays, there's been drops, there's been penalties. I go back to a few weeks ago. The Jets had a free play. Garrett Wilson makes the catch and gets us inside the 10 or 15-yard line, wherever it was. And then Lazar with a block in the back. It was a free play, and the Jets managed to lose 15 yards. That's just, perfect, you know, Jet stuff right there. Um, but I mean, for us to kind of hone in and just point the finger at Zach, I think is a little premature. Yeah, he's not great. In his career, through 29 starts, he's got a 56% completion percentage, and he has averaged 187 yards per game, 20 touchdowns. That's less than one touchdown per game. That's just not good for a guy that you picked number two overall. You're expecting that number to be obviously a little bit more than the number of starts played. Has he gotten better? Sure. When you look at through this season, through 8 games, Obviously, he's 7 starts, 8 games he's played, 5 touchdowns. That ratio actually comes down a little lower than his career average, um, but 60% completion percentage, 200 yards per game. Is it better? Sure, but, I mean, are we really moving the needle? Because, on an average of 25 pass attempts per game, he's completed 1 more pass for 13 yards. Is that really something to kind of, stick on, that he's gonna be our quarterback for the future? The answer to that is no. Um, I understand right now he's probably our best option, and I also do understand on the other side, we just don't know because we've seen Josh Johnson come in and have this offense move at a high clip. We've seen Mike White come in and have this offense move at a high clip, and even a statue of Joe Flacco come in and, have 300-yard passing games with this group. Um, with Trevor Siemian, I mean, yeah, he's had good games in his career, but when I did the comparison a few weeks ago, I'm just pulling up my notes on that again. When I did the comparison a few weeks ago between Trevor Siemian and Zach Wilson, the you know, overall stat line is pretty much drawn in line. At the time, Zach had a 55% completion percentage. Now he's at 56. Trevor Siemian has a career of 57%. Passing yards per game, Zach was at 180. Trevor Siemian has had a career passing yards per game of about 170. So obviously, that's going to be a little bit of a drop off. But where you have the big boost is the touchdown to interception ratio, um, where Trevor Siemian has a 12-4 average interception touchdown ratio or touchdown to interception ratio. That's probably the biggest factor, at least when I look at the stats as a whole. But when you look at the picture of itself, it's really not something that is even worth arguing about. Both these guys are lower tier quarterbacks in this league. There's a reason that Trevor Siemian was picked up off of the streets, and other teams like the Vikings are trading draft picks for backup quarterbacks. Um, because when you have a good backup quarterback, it's something that is a commodity. So for Trevor Siemian to just be sitting on the streets and the Jets will pick him up, and even the Jets not being willing to put him on the 53-man roster in favor of Tim Boyle, it really kind of shows a lot. I understand the first few weeks. Obviously, has to get acclimated to the system, get acclimated to the offense, learn the players, learn the playbook, et cetera, et cetera. But we've seen quarterbacks come in and do it um, on really short timelines. We saw it just this season again. I'm bringing up Josh Dobbs, got traded, got thrust into the role because of an injury, and ended up leading the team to a victory and a win and a comeback win at that. Um, we saw it last year. Baker Mayfield got picked up. I think that he got cut by the Panthers. Rams picked him up. 3 days later, he's leading a comeback drive win for the Rams on I think it was Sunday Night Football or Monday Night Football or something like that. Um, I know it was prime time because it was a big kind of storyline for a couple days. But you know, the Jets are reaching a point here, and I think that we all just need to have patience here. I understand, the season appears to be slipping away. We're at 4-4, few more losses, especially with this slate coming up against the obviously the Raiders this week, but we also have two big division games coming up against Buffalo and Miami. The season obviously has that kind of view of it could potentially be over by Black Friday if things really kind of stream downwards. So I definitely understand the cause for concern. I definitely understand the frustration that nothing is being done here. But we're talking about a situation here where really it's a lose lose for whoever's back there. Trevor Siemian is not going to block pass rushers off the right side. Trevor Siemian is not going to gain separation on third down and lead to completions. Um, Trevor Siemian is going to be back there in the same situation Zach's in, getting little to no time to do anything in critical situations, and without much happening at the wide receiver position. And even the running game has been just abysmal. There's nothing going on in the running game, and obviously that has a lot to do with the deficiencies at the offensive line. I mean, there's just not enough happening up front to really gain any sort of momentum. When the Jets do gain momentum, there's a false start, there's a holding, there's a block in the back. There's a myriad of reasons why this offense is just struggling. Um, is Zach part of the problem? Of course. He's a quarterback that is performing um, below expectations from a draft position, and even below expectations of what we expected from him this year. Again, has he improved? Yes, but the improvement is so marginal that I mean that's development of a third year quarterback just getting better year over year. It's not something that you can look at and say, "Oh wow, he's really progressed." I look at a third year jump, and I'm looking at a guy like Josh Allen, who first couple of years looked like an average quarterback. Year three, boom, he was, you know, an MVP conversation type of quarterback. Um, Zach Wilson has not made that jump. Zach Wilson hasn't even made the jump to average. Zach Wilson is a what? I mean, depending on what metrics you look at, he's 25 to 30, um, and even in some cases lower than that, ranked quarterback in the league. That is abysmal. That is not what the Jets picked number 2 overall. That is a reason why the Jets went into the offseason and had to bring in a huge quarterback. That's the reason the Jets brought in Aaron Rodgers, not because Zach Wilson was something that they saw positives in. They brought in Aaron Rodgers because, 1, it gave this front office a little bit more time to wipe that crap off their face from picking Zach Wilson and how awful he's been, to maybe see if behind a Hall of Fame quarterback, can he develop into something that we can put out there on Sundays and not worry about what we're seeing right now. It's just not it's not happening for Zach. But again, this coaching staff sees these guys at practice. They understand who's there. They understand who's playing, and Trevor Siemian isn't it either. Again, could he get us a couple wins? Maybe stealing a couple wins? Yeah, and that's why I'm in favor of it. But at the end of the day, this coaching staff is going to be the ones making the decision. This front office is making the decision, and even Woody Johnson's involved in these decisions. And at some point this season, I do believe Zach Wilson will be on the bench, um, but I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, obviously, it's not happening this week. Could it happen next week? We'll see. I mean, it could even happen at halftime. Um, but the Jets have shown no movement to make that look like it's going to happen. If Trevor Siemian gets elevated to the active roster, then maybe, obviously, kind of connect the dots. You can see that maybe there's a view of if Zach has a bad game, we pull the plug on him. I just don't think Tim Boyle is going to be one that the Jets are going to put in favor of Zach Wilson, or over Zach Wilson. That almost just and it's a major problem for the Jets too. I mean, how they handled this quarterback situation from the get go. Um, I mean, and it is what teams are doing nowadays too, is bringing in a rookie quarterback, getting him ready so you can take advantage of that first 3 or 4 years where you don't have to pay him. Um, and then obviously, if you make that decision after 4 years, well, the Jets have made this decision after 2 years, and that I mean, we're we're 10 months removed, 10 or 11 months removed from the Jets putting in Chris Streveler, who couldn't throw. He's the equivalent of what DeVito is for the Giants. And even actually DeVito can throw a little bit better than Chris Streveler from what we've seen, at least in the last game. Was able to get to 175 yards passing. That's what Zach Wilson is doing. That is literally what Zach Wilson is doing in year 3 as a number 2 overall pick. You have a guy that last week was the team was scared to have throwing for 175 yards in a game against the Raiders. Um, just not enough good stuff here, um, for Zach Wilson. But for us to be going back and forth, Jets fans, on something. First off, we have no control over, and two, for something that's just not going to happen. Zach's going to be our starter this week. It's going to be the case. But at some point or another, it will shift. The Jets are going to have to make a decision. They cannot keep you know producing this type of offense with the way that defense is playing week in and week out. You know, the fact that the Jets defense gave up 191 yards and we lost by 21 points is just mind-boggling. And obviously, a lot of those points, one came on the punt return, one came on the fumble recovery that got all the way to the inside the 5 yard line. Um, nothing bad on defense. The only thing I would say, only critique I would give on this defense and maybe fall on a fumble when it's on the floor. But listen, that defense played to win that game. The defense played. They should have won that game. But let's put it that way. If the offense came out and was even remotely, uh, remotely competent, again, if Zach Wilson was playing at a 50 as a 15 top 15, even top 20 quarterback clip, that would be the case. But again, in order for Zach Wilson to be at a top 20 quarterback, this offensive line has to play better. This wide receiver group has to get better, and I think that has a lot more to do with, what you know, more to do with too with Zach Wilson. I mean, in order for him to succeed, everything else around him has to be perfect. And unfortunately, in the NFL, that's not the case. Every play, something goes wrong. It's the NFL. There are as good players on the defensive side of the ball as there are on the offensive side of the ball. Nothing goes perfect on any given play. Even the tush push play that the Eagles run every week. You know, that's even as high of a success rate as that is, you know, it's an imperfect play. I mean, all it is just players getting on top of one another and shoving the quarterback, whatever, and all it takes is, a defensive line to get in there. But with Jalen Hurts' power and his, lower body strength, he's able to kind of, work through whatever creases kind of get developed. It's as perfect as that play is from a success standpoint. It's that's even an imperfect play, and teams have to, kind of work on the fly, and where that's part of the reason why Zach was someone the Jets really kind of coveted coming out of the draft is that he was a player that worked off script very well. He was able to kind of extend plays and make plays down the field, similar to what Mahomes did, what we've seen out of Aaron Rodgers throughout his career. Just that has not translated to the NFL. He's not evading the pocket backwards. That's progress. But again, all these little small wins is just not enough for NFL football. It's just not enough to move the needle. It's progress, sure. It could have gone backwards too, but not. I mean, how much worse could it really have gotten? Um, I just don't know if there's an answer I can give to anybody that's going to make anyone happy. All I can say is for us to argue over Trevor Siemian, Zach Wilson, and Tim Boyle. I mean, obviously, I know Tim Boyle hasn't really been brought up, but for us to argue at Zach Wilson over Trevor Siemian, it's kind of debating on apples and apples. I mean, it's just which apple to pick from the tree. It's just really not enough to move this needle. Um, Unfortunately, the Jets have put themselves in this position. Next offseason, this is got to be corrected. There's no way the Jets can go into next year with Zach Wilson as the second quarterback. Can he be on the roster? Sure, if they're that desperate to keep him on the roster, but he cannot be the second quarterback. There were too many options available. Gardner Minshew, um, jeez, I forget all the names. Joshua Dobbs obviously was not someone we were talking about, but he was someone that got picked up like 2 weeks, 3 weeks before the season started. Was someone that was available. Teddy Bridgewater was available for quite some time. I believe Jacoby Brissett was out there too. I mean, you're talking about like players that have shown and proven that they can come in and operate NFL offenses. Um, Geez, I mean, it's incredible. Only the Jets kind of go into a season where and obviously salary restrictions. Um, but Gardner Minshew, I think, signed for like $2 million on this year, and the Jets paid just as much for Dalvin Cook, to where they could have gotten Gardner Minshew and maybe a lower tier running back and still gotten the same production at the running back position because Dalvin Cook has been no good. Alan Lazard, obviously, 11 million per year, but that I think had a lot to do with Aaron Rodgers wanting to come here because he had familiarity with Hackett's offense and obviously familiarity with what Aaron Rodgers expects out of his wide receivers. But in the same token, Alan Lazard is not producing to what I would expect Rodgers would want to see out of the wide receiver position. So it's just going to be a conversation that we're going to continue to have over the next few weeks until a change is made, and then after that, it's almost like deja vu of what happened last year. When Trevor Siemian comes in, does he provide a spark? Maybe. but at some point or another, he's not the franchise quarterback, obviously. We're just hoping, as a fan base, that all these Aaron Rodgers statements are true, that it is something that is possible for him to return, and if that is possible, at the very least, and I think that he was on the McAfee show this week and kind of gave a few fortnights, as a timeline, kinda still being, like, kind of a little bit hidden on his response. Um, that mapped out to maybe mid-December. So if you're looking at mid-December, I mean, the Jets have to be 7-7, um, going into week 16 for really it to be possible. And even that, I mean, that AFC North is just really strong. All those teams would be in the playoffs today if the season ended. Obviously, I think there's a lot of games still to play, between one another in that division, so that'll kinda help a little bit with them beating each other up a little bit. Maybe that, shifts the standings in our favor a little bit, but as we stand right now, 4 and 4, um, if that target of week 16 is indeed accurate, um, the Jets have to figure out a way to win 3 games, over these next 6. Obviously, the more the better, but Raiders is probably the most winnable game, at least in the near sight, that we can see. Buffalo's a strong team, as bad as that defense has been after the Milano injury. They're still a really strong team. Dolphins, we know what they are. They're a team that has struggled against strong teams, but has blown away bad teams. Where the Jets stand right now? Are they a good team or a bad team? They're an elite defense, but they are a terrible offense. So it just comes down to where you personally view the team as a whole. I think they more strangle on the side of a good team. They just have deficiencies, major deficiencies that need to be corrected. We've been hearing it for weeks and weeks and weeks that this team is getting close. We'll figure it out. Um, but we're watching this team on Sundays, and it's the same exact story every single week. Third down, nothing happens. In the red zone, penalties, sacks, just not enough. It just is not enough. Does it start with the quarterback position? Yeah. But does it end with Trevor Siemian leading us to victories? Who knows? But Jet fans, I think that is coming sooner rather than later. It's just not this week. Jets fans, if you haven't already, please take some time and like and subscribe to my channel. Need all the help I can get trying to grow this channel. Um, and again, if you can, just hit that damn like button. Try and get as much progress as I can. Thank thank you guys, and have a great day. And let's go Jets.